I have a confession to make. I use commercial brushes. In fact, I use commercial brushes a lot, which for a primitive potter like me is really not good. So I'm hoping to fix that this year. I'm hoping to do better on using the correct primitive tools to make my primitive pottery. And one of the things I'm hoping to improve on right away is the use of commercial paintbrushes. So today I'm making brushes. I went out recently and collected yucca leaves in the desert. So let me show you that video first, and then we'll come back here to the studio and I'll show you how I turn those leaves into paintbrushes. A number of different species of yucca grow around the Southwest, and I was fortunate to find a spot that had many of them all growing in the same valley. The narrow leaf yucca is what was traditionally used to make paintbrushes. But some of the others include the soto, which can be recognized by its sawtooth barbs on the edge of the leaves. The beargrass, which has long leaves that are used in basketry. The wide leaf yucca, which has wide, coarse leaves, but also produces the fleshy fruit that I use to make organic pottery paint. In order to make yucca leaf paintbrushes, you want to harvest those fine, new leaves that are growing out of the inner part of the yucca plant. Reach in, grab them firmly, and pull them out. These are the leaves that will easily make brushes. To show that process up close, reach in, plan on getting poked a few times, grab them firmly, and tug. The leaves will pull right out. All right, so I've got my yucca leaves. It's about 3 days after I picked them, and they've just dried up. They're as dry as straw right now, just from sitting around since I picked them. The first thing I want to do is I want to trim off these sharp points so I don't hurt myself because they are quite pokey. And then once I get those trimmed down, if you look at the base of the leaf, you'll see there's kind of a weird area where it was pulled out of the plant. So you want to trim that off as well. The base is where we're actually going to make the brushes. So what we want is a nice section of nice straight fibers to use as our brush. So we're going to trim that up a little bit to get away from those strange fibers down at the end. And then the other thing we're going to do is a lot of these leaves will have these little fibers along the edge of the leaf, little hair fibers, and we'll just pull those off because those are not going to help us. Those kind of have a curl to them. And once we get these leaves all trimmed and ready to go, then all I have to do is soak them. After a week or two of soaking in water, the flesh on these leaves will just fall away from the fibers and it'll be real easy to turn these into brushes. So I'll put these in water. I'll keep the water topped off to this level the whole time that the leaves are in here. That way it rots right to that edge. Everything above that water level will be the handle of the paintbrush. Everything below will be the brush itself. So I'll leave these sitting in the water and I'll come back and show you the rest of the process in a couple of weeks. Okay, it's been about a week since I put these in the jar with the water, and testing has shown me that they're ready to go, or at least some of them are. You'll find that different leaves rot down at different rates, and so yours may take longer or they may be faster. These rotted down a lot faster than most. Usually I do 2 to 3 weeks before they're ready. So I think, this is just my working theory, that the age of the leaves has something to do with it. These were fresh, brand new leaves that were growing this spring, and they rotted rather quickly. I think the older, more mature leaves have like a waxy coat on them that prevents the water and that bacteria from getting in there and rotting them down good. At any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get started working on some of these leaves, and I'll show you how to turn these rotted yucca leaves into really great paintbrushes. So what you're going to want is something that has a little bit of a dull edge. Sometimes a butter knife can work good. Sometimes even your fingernails can work. You just don't want anything too sharp that's going to cut those fibers under there. The fibers are really delicate because they've been soaking in water for a week, and so we don't want to cut those. What we're hoping to do here is to remove the skin and the pulp and leave those fibers in place. If you put too much pressure on it, if you use too sharp an object, you can start cutting off fibers. You know, and you are going to lose a few fibers always. You can see some errant fibers right there. I'm going to pull those off. Now, what you'll see is there's an outer piece of fiber here, a wider piece of fiber on the outside. You can just pull that off. That is not useful to us. And here it is over here. You can see it's a darker color. Once you've got the majority of the pulp worked off of that brush, it can help to kind of keep those fibers damp because they're more likely to break if they get dry. And so I'll just dip them in water and just kind of work it with my fingers. And you'll see up here there might be a piece of the leaf skin that hasn't come off. And so I'm just kind of try to pull that off of there. Now this is a long brush. I mean, probably got 2 inches of fiber there. I'll show you in a little bit how you can trim this down with a scissor and make it whatever size brush you want. But sometimes those long brushes are good for pulling lines. So if you've got all the pulp out of it, and you can kind of roll it between your finger like that, if you got all the pulp out of it, you're good to go. You just want to make sure those fibers are all free, because only if they're free are they going to be able to grab onto and hold paint well. You don't want them to be stuck together with any pulp. Those all look pretty good though. And you can see how fine those yucca fibers are. That's why they make good brushes. They're very fine, very straight fibers. So I'll just set that down and allow it to dry with those fibers straight. You don't want to let it dry with the fibers bent, you know, sitting up or anything, because the brush will tend to take on that shape. In fact, every time you use it, always leave it to dry flat. So let's work another one of those. Here's the second one. Again, I'm just using that dull edge to kind of remove that skin and that pulp. Pull off that thick fiber on the side there, get it wet, make sure those fibers are all free and all the pulp is gone. Roll it a little bit between your fingers, and that looks pretty good. There's another good paintbrush. All right, I got the brushes all made, or at least I got all the pulp out of the fibers, so they're ready to use. Now, the thing is, they need to be trimmed, right? So depending on what kind of brush I use, depends on what I'm gonna do to it, right? So some of these I wanna use as a liner brush, and in that case, I'll leave the fibers long, like they are. But some of these I want to use as filler brushes, in which case I'll trim the bristles shorter. Also, if I want a narrower brush, I can split the leaf horizontally into thinner and thinner brushes. I could use just a couple of fibers to make a very, very fine liner brush. So in order to get these used, I have a pot here today that I'm gonna paint. So I'm gonna do some work on this pot, and while I'm at it, I will be modifying these brushes as I go about the painting for the different functions that I need brushes for. So today I'm using black mineral paint, and I'm gonna be using these yucca brushes that I just made. So the first line I need to paint is a wide black line that's gonna cover this boundary where the yellow meets the white. For that thick line, I'm gonna use the thickest of my brushes. The tip is kind of weird though, so I'm gonna pull out my scissors and just trim it down a little bit. A fairly even tip. The next thing I need to paint is a narrow line that will parallel this thicker line that I painted. So I need to get a brush that is relatively thin and long bristled so that I can paint that finer line. So I'm gonna use this longer brush, and I'm just gonna trim a little bit off of it, maybe a ½ inch at the most. So at this point, I'm looking for an even thinner brush than I have. So I'm gonna split one of these in two. Just kind of divide it into roughly equal halves. Split it right down the middle if you can. This one seemed to get a good deal of the bristles, but very little of the handle. And this one got a lot of handle and not as much of the bristles. So I don't know which is best. Even though it's kind of a sad handle, I kind of like the bristles on this one. I think I'm gonna cut them a little shorter. And ready to go to work. So at this point, I have all the line work done. I need a filler brush to fill in these little chevrons or whatever these solid areas are here. And then I've got some stair steps to do up here, which is also gonna require a wider brush. So what I'm hoping to do is trim one of these leaves into not just a filler brush, but a square, a stepping brush, a brush that has a nice square edge that I can make those stair steps with. So if I can get these fibers to lay straight, I will just trim this off as even as I can. That will do the job for me. We will see. I'm gonna fill in these areas below, and then we'll do the stair steps at the neck, and we should be just about done. Okay, I got this pot all painted. I hope this gave you some confidence to go out and try making your own yucca brushes. Even if you don't live in the New World, you may have access to yuccas, so give that a thought. Maybe try making some brushes. They're really nice brushes. They're actually really good quality. They're not just convenient, and they're not just free, which, you know, are great attributes, but there's more to it than that. They're really a nice brush, and they can last for years. I've still got some more painting to do this morning. I made this little bird effigy jar in the Ancient Potters Club in the month of April. And so we just finished it up last night, but I didn't have time during the class to finish the painting. So I've got some more hatching to do, and I'm gonna use these new yucca brushes to get this finished up this morning as well. I appreciate you coming along with me today. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.